Um, Alexa, play WHYY.
WHYY from Rob's Tune-In.
Welcome to Tune-In. Support for your WHYY listening comes from Curaleaf. In April, it's time to learn about medical marijuana. With a commitment to education and wellness, Curaleaf has 6 locations in the greater Philly area. Learn more at curaleaf.com.
Mississippi. And here's what the white people did. They pulled up in a big pickup truck, and they got out with the monkey. And on the monkey's sign, there was a sign on the monkey that says, "I want to vote too." Now that was both the murderers and the humorists coming to the fore. But you know, we had humor that would beat their humor, because a huge debate broke out in the line of black people. And some people said, "That's an insult. Why would they insult us like that?" And other people said, "No, that's no insult. That 85-year-old white woman has a right to vote like anybody else." Anyway, that was the summer of '64. People were killed, we sang, we laughed. But you know, it was Harry Belafonte who actually summed up the immense experience of that summer by bringing people from outside, bringing the world press to Mississippi, and it was the beginning of the end of racial segregation at the voting booth in Mississippi and the rest of the South, because by 1965, the next year, the Voting Rights Act passed. And it passed because people like Harry Belafonte and Sidney Poitier and my friend Marlon Brando came south and helped us. Harry summed it up at the end of that great mass meeting when he said, "No matter what they do, it is always true that brotherhood and sisterhood is not so wild a dream as those who profit by postponing it pretend." Thank you.
That was Bob Zellner. Bob is the author of the memoir, The Wrong Side of Murder, a white Southerner in the freedom movement. Bob has moved back to Lower Alabama, where he continues to fight to defend democracy, working with Dr. Reverend William Barber II, Brian Stevenson's Equal Rights Initiative, and the NAACP. Bob and his wife Pamela also collaborate with youth leadership training platforms like SAABill.org, and they support the Black Lives Matter movement. Bob opens his story telling us about his relatives in the Klan, and I could just feel my body tense up as he described it. Where was he going with the story? But to hear him break that particular family tradition and go in just the opposite direction, that gives his story wings.
Perfect.
I asked Bob what he thought of the recent protests, and he said that the summer of 2020 convinced him that he was right. Freedom is a constant struggle, and democracy is fragile and must be supported and corrected periodically. To see photos of Bob during the time of the story, go to themoth.org/extras. Coming up after the break, a love story for the ages. That's when the Moth Radio Hour continues.
Woods Hole, Massachusetts, and presented by the Public Radio Exchange, prx.org.
For 30 years, psychologist Deborah Derrickson-Kosman was not allowed in her mother's house. When she finally got inside, Kosman made a horrifying discovery. It was filled with mountains of trash. There was no running water, no functioning toilets, years of unpaid bills. I'm Marty Moscoline, and Sunday on The Connection, I'll talk with Kosman about her memoir, Lost, Found, Kept. It's about holding on and letting go. The Connection, Sunday at noon on WHYY and wherever you get your podcasts.
On the next Fresh Air weekend, Richard Kind. He's been in hundreds of movies and TV shows, including Only Murders in the Building and Curb Your Enthusiasm. He's now in Everybody's Live with John Mulaney as Mulaney's sidekick. Also, we hear from Melinda French Gates. Her new book reflects on motherhood, philanthropy, and life after divorce. Join us.
Tonight at 10 on WHYY.
You're listening to the Moth Radio Hour from PRX. I'm Suzanne Rust. Our final teller is Cynthia Riggs. If you've been listening to The Moth for a while, you might remember her first story about a late-in-life romantic correspondence with a man she worked with as a young woman. That story ended with Cynthia telling us she was planning to travel to California to meet him again after 60 years. Well, this story is chapter 2. But don't worry if you haven't heard the first story. Cynthia gives a little context at the top for precisely that reason. Cynthia told the story